So today on the Conversation Pit podcast, I have the opportunity to sit with a guy that I admire for his activism and his perspective on politics and the things that he stands behind. There's a lot of people that have a lot of complaints, and there's a lot of people that can pick apart the things they don't like, but they don't put one foot in front of the other to do anything about it. I sometimes can be one of those people. I think that we can all say that we vent to someone with no actual plan to do anything. But I respect the people that have no problem taking a day off of work or uprooting their lives to do something about the causes that they believe in. And I've watched Salaah do these kinds of things, even when they weren't popular, I would say. Salaah is still the kind of guy that gets behind what he believes in, and that's something that is admirable to me. Today we have like a not so serious discussion, but we have some things to kind of hash out and explain, and we want to give a different perspective on the political climate that we're fighting right now. There's a lot to be said about what's happening, but I think that Salaah can help us kind of formulate a plan to help us not be the victim and to kind of control the outcome of the election sort of in November. So I'm gonna give Salaah a couple of minutes to talk about what he does and what he's into and introduce himself. It's a very long list, so just know if he cuts it short to 5 minutes that there's probably more that he could say. But I'll let him explain all of that. Salaah?
I appreciate that. That was one of the best introductions I have ever gotten, hands down.
This one was free. The next one I'll probably charge you for.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because now I'm going to remember to take this recording and then just play it for folks when I introduce it myself. So we got this on tape now.
Yeah, just walk me out there like Michael Buffer, you know?
Yeah. But I do appreciate that, and I want to thank you for bringing me on this conversation. I think, like you said in the beginning, some of these things that we talk about isn't always popular, but it's important to stand behind those beliefs in it. And so, for folks who don't know me, my name is Salaah Muhammad. Let's see, what do I do? I am an activist. I'm a community organizer. I work for Color of Change as a regional field manager. And I organize for Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware. I am also a podcaster, a fellow podcaster. I host the Salah's Corner podcast, Salah's Corner blog. Appreciate that. I think it's a pretty good show too. Yeah. I'm also a host in different things. So I also host my own platforms of, just community discussions. Now it's been Zoom discussions, right? Because of COVID. I also am a freelance writer as well. And am contributing to a few different magazines that are out there. Giving my perspective on the political landscape, but also how people can get plugged in, because that's something near and dear to my heart, is how people can actually get plugged in, how Black people can get plugged in, which I'm sure we'll talk about at length. Yeah, I am also just recently, I don't share this part enough, but I need to get into the habit of this. I launched my own nonprofit, nonpartisan political organization dedicated to teaching civic engagement to young people. Again, that's something that I hold near and dear, because, one of the reasons why I got into this work around political organizing is because I understand the dynamic of how our communities aren't educated well enough. And instead of, just complaining about it, not coming up with a plan, or just kind of venting to the room, create a space for folks that they can vent in the room that we're in, but then also come out of it with tools that they've learned, resources that they have, and different ways that they can plug in to actually shape some change in their community. That's the overarching list of the different things that I work on. If you ask anybody that knows me, I'll pick up a project real quick, real fast. So don't let me be sitting too long. Because honestly, I got somebody probably hitting me up after this to help them out with a project later tonight. So that's how busy I be sometimes. But it's always good busy.
I was going to say that's good though, because I think they say idle hands is the devil's playground, and I think that when you have a talent and a skill and you become idle, then you're wasting it. right? And I think things like this and platforms like this give you an opportunity to use that skill, but also hone in that passion that you have and, help other people along the way, right? So we're going to dive kind of right in. Won't want to waste too much time. So I'm going to start with something that is a true thing, but I want to know why it's not true. Let me backtrack. It's not true, but I want to know why so many of us think this. So like a lot of Black people think that it's better to be Democrat than Republican, right? Now, if you ask me, neither one of these parties really care about us either way, right? But that's a thing that I think is so common. And if you are a Black or brown person and you tell someone that you are a Republican, they're going to look at you like you are the leader of the KKK. And so from your perspective, because I know that you are a history person. So from your perspective, like whereabout do you think that started and why is that the case? Like, why are we led to believe that that's the best thing for us?
Yeah. That's a lot to unpack really, because it comes with an understanding that, you have to understand the dynamic of Black life in America. Right. And for everybody that's Black out there that's listening in, and for those who aren't, this is a lesson for you. We know that when we move together, we are better protected. Mm-hmm. It's a survival mechanism, right? And that applies to voting. That applies to how we live as it relates to being Black in America. Mm-hmm. We know that we are better protected from, the other ethnicities, the other groups that are out there. Let me rephrase that. We know that we are protected from white people who are racist when we are in solidarity together. Right. And so from a political perspective, a lot of that really bore out of in the late 60s, 70s, I would say. And we can get into the history of people, the Democrats of today, they used to be the Republican Party or the Republican. We can get into all of that, but that's over everybody's head. The real fact of the matter is at the root of it, the Democratic Party has shown a less willingness to be openly racist than the Republican Party has shown themselves to be. And that's what it really boils it really down to. You can go back through the history, especially in the past few decades. I really only want to focus up until about like the 1970s, when you saw the rise of Richard Nixon, ultimately ended up getting impeached. You saw Jimmy Carter come in after him, and then you saw, Ronald Reagan. You saw that to be a Republican was very synonymous and akin to, being segregated and racist attacks and things like that. And so that's why you saw the majority of Black people, find a home in the Democratic Party. That does not mean the Democratic Party is not racist and has not supported racist policies. Right. The Republican Party just has been a lot more open about it. Yeah. And so when we have a system of governance that is a two-party system, especially when it comes to presidential politics, we can talk about local stuff. And when you break that down into local elections, you have opportunities for different parties. Right. For instance, here in Philadelphia, you have the Working Families Party. They were able to elect for the first time a third-party candidate into city council. That is never going to happen on a presidential level. Right. On a presidential level, you got two parties. Right. You got the Democrats, you got the Republicans. If one party is proving to be much more, and let me make sure I say that explicitly, openly racist. If one party is showing to be more openly racist than the other, you only got the two to choose from, so which one are you going to choose from? The one that's openly racist or the one that is right? And that's, that will sell you, whatever, or at least, play lip service to you. Yeah. Right. And so that's kind of where it boiled down to, right? Nobody wants to be associated with the person that's openly racist. Mm-hmm. Right. And so that's kind of how that bore out of like, why you have to be Black to be a Democrat.
But see, that's the thing, though. I think that a lot of people, to what you said, no one wants to be associated with the person that's openly racist. But at the same time, I'd rather know. I'd rather know. I'd rather know, like, you know what, I know what I'm going to get and I know what I'm not going to get, versus the person that's going to, like you said, give me all this lip service and then turn out to be just like the other guy. You know what I mean? Because I feel like in a lot of ways that's so manipulative that it's like, yeah, well, I'm going to tell you everything you want to hear because I know you people are just going to vote for us anyway because that's what you want to hear. But once I get this job, you guys don't exist. So, so I think that's always been my issue with it. It's like you can't, we cannot vote for, I don't want to say can't. It's more difficult for us to vote for people that care about the things that we care about or are going to do things about the things that we have a problem with. Because the likelihood of them coming through, once they get the opportunity to change the things they said they would, is so low.
And so this is where the disconnect comes in for folks that are out there. As to, like, I'd rather be affiliated with the person I know who to be the racist than the person that's in the closet who I don't know what they're going to come out with.
Right.
The difference is we're talking about politics. We're talking about elected government. And that, and to understand politics and understand our federal government, is to understand that compromise happens regardless.
Right.
The person that's openly racist is not willing to compromise with me because they don't like me. They're racist. They think I'm beneath them in different ways, and they bore that out in different policies. The person that is not openly racist is willing to hear from me, even if it's to give lip service. And so to play that out a little bit, what you then saw through the decades is you saw the Democratic Party being infiltrated with Black people, because you did have people, mainstay party figures, that were willing to listen to the Black figures that were in the party, that were willing to elect them into office and give them a seat at the table, right? And so what you then saw was the party start to evolve and change over time. You saw the party become more liberal. Why? Because we know that you have less, you're less likely to be racist. You're less likely to hold these conservative views when you are surrounded by people who come from different backgrounds and come from different ethnicities and come from different socioeconomic statuses, right? And so as the party starts to include more and more people, even though initially it was lip service,
right,
you see the party start to change. But you still see the other party not really willing to listen to and support, that. And so the government is about that. It's about that compromise. We know, again, there's only the two parties. If you have one party that's openly racist and not willing to compromise, what really can you do?
But see, it's wild to me that the thing that you have to compromise is, or the area that you're working to find compromise, is racism. I can deal with policy disputes. You know what I mean? Like I can deal with, like, and this is super oversimplifying, but like I can deal with, like, you getting upset because your small town doesn't want to bring in a Starbucks because they don't like chain stores. You know what I mean? Like, all right, we can fight about that, but just basic human treatment is a thing that I think we all acknowledge that no one should have to fight for. It shouldn't be something that I'm like, yeah, this dude doesn't like me and he's open about it, and this dude doesn't like me but he hides it. At least he listens a little. He listens sometimes, so I can deal with that. And I think that's just I think for us, it just puts us in a position where it's uncomfortable either way. And I think depending on your personality, I think depending on your viewpoint on it, I think it causes so many of us to get lost in the shuffle and to become completely disinterested in the whole process in the first place, right? I think part of the issue is that a lot of the knowledge that we have is about how government works is passed down from other people that may also not know how that works. So you might not be told how it works, you don't understand how to manipulate it, you lose interest, and then all of a sudden you don't count. And I think that we sometimes fall into a trap of saying that no one cares. And we also don't do the things to make them care either. Mm-hmm. Right. So different example, I went to public school, and I've been in public school, Christian school, Catholic school, and back to public school. Right. And so I remember in high school, parent-teacher conferences, and you get 10% of the student population coming to parent-teacher conferences. But then you get things in the news that's like, oh, well, they're eliminating elective classes, no more music, no more art, all of these things. And the parents are outraged. Well, what are the kids supposed to do? Well, yeah, you're right. But when you had the opportunity to do something about that and to say, no, we need to keep these things allocated for these children, you weren't there. Now, that's not to say that we deserve to have those things removed. But at the same time, it's like, well, you could have done something about it, but you were disinterested. And I think that kind of feeds into that. And that kind of thing, I don't even know if I can call that systematic, right? But that kind of feeds into that perpetual culture that we just get overlooked. But are you really overlooked when you aren't looking either?
All of that is really tied together, right? So there is a systematic way of disenfranchising people from the process. A lot of that starts on the housing level, right? In ways that we don't even understand sometimes, or we didn't initially at least, but we didn't understand the connection points of how when you have segregated housing and you set up school districts to be funded through your housing, and you put all the poor people together into one small area or even one large area, they're still all poor. You start to understand that the school is not receiving the appropriate funding because it's taxing on the poorest people, which means you do have to end up cutting those types of classes, right? So then you don't educate them the right way, meaning they leave the education system, the K through 12, and they're not necessarily equipped to do very, very simple, what we call American things like vote, right? But the other side of that is also understanding that everything is policy. Everything is policy. So when we talk about things that we shouldn't have to fight for, like we shouldn't have had to have a civil war to end slavery, but slavery was policy. That was written into policy. And sometimes for Black people, or I won't even just say Black people, broadly speaking, oppressed people, we don't understand that everything that we are fighting against is written into policy. And so we have to start talking about how do we change policy to benefit us? Because I know that people should, in air quotes, just be treated better. Right. But everybody is not doing that, right? I know I shouldn't have to tell you shouldn't have slaves, but nigga, you got slaves. So we need to make sure that there's policy in place to protect people from becoming slaves. Same thing when we talk about education. There needs to be policy in place that promotes the education of, civic engagement through our K through 12 education system, because the voting piece is a very essential part. And all civic engagement, really. When we talk about civic engagement, we talk about voting, we talk about completing the census, we talk about, protesting, because protesting all of a sudden has this bad rep or has had this bad rep, but that is an actual form of civic engagement. In fact, America was founded on a protest. And so that's a form of civic engagement. That should be a mandatory part of our K through 12 curriculum in our education system, but it's not. That's policy. And so we have to learn how do we change the argument from how things should be and being mad and frustrated over how things should be, and shift the argument on things aren't this way. How do we change the policy to make it so?
Right. So what do we do now for people that are, by the time you can vote, you're no longer in the school system. And if you're not taught the value of voting before the presidential level, how do we go about educating people on that process, though? Because there's so many people that um, just don't have the proper understanding, or we get those things in our mailboxes and just throw them in the trash. And it's like, well, you need to vote for your judges and your local city council and things like that. But I think a lot of us just don't really know what those local level people do, right? Unless you've needed that, you don't know that your state rep can help you if this person doesn't. They seem like they don't want to sell you this house in the neighborhood that you want to move into. They don't know that you can just call or walk into this person's office and say, hey, I got a problem here. So what do we do for the people that are not in school anymore to kind of get them engaged and educated moving forward? Because that seems to be tough.
It is tough, right? And so with that, we talked a little bit about that. It is a systematic approach to disenfranchised people that starts on the education level, but it also comes down through policing.
Yeah.
It also comes down through, I mentioned very briefly, but housing segregation. It also comes down through jobs, right? And the idea is to pigeonhole you into this isolated community so that you haven't had the education to understand how you can get plugged in. You don't trust the system now. Rightfully so, right? And so it's important. I talk to folks like myself who are other community organizers, who are other people who just are trying to find ways to get engaged. We have to do a better job. And when I mean we, I mean activists, community organizers, or politicians who are actually interested in addressing those issues for those community members. We have to do a better job of wrapping our arms around people who feel the most disenfranchised.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of work and a lot of fucking heavy lifting. Can I curse?
You're fine.
I curse. All right. I cursed a couple times on here. All right, cool. When I'm real casual, I curse a lot. So like a whole lot.
You're good.
But like we got to do a better job because, I can't get in front. I can go to West Philly with a suit and tie on and try to like preach to brothers about shit. They're going to be like, fuck out of here. Or like, no, they don't want to hear that. Like, I need to come correct. I need to come about their issues that they care about, but I also need to be consistent and wrap my arms around them and create a relationship with them. Right. We know that when I mean we, I mean organizers. We know that the most influential people we can sway about getting involved with things are the people we have a relationship with first.
Right.
And so I need to create the relationship with you before I can tell you to go vote and do anything. And that's the area that I think sometimes we miss. We very often see messages about go vote, go vote, go vote. It gets to election season every 4 years. Go vote, go vote. Well, fucking why? Who am I voting for? Why am I voting? What are they supporting? Well, how does this benefit me? Like, I haven't done the work to create the relationship with you before I actually told you what to do. And that is that I hate to put the grunt of that work sometimes on organizers and activists, but that's the job. That's the job you signed up for. Create the relationships with the people you want to sway before you think you can sway them, right? You can't. We have to oftentimes one of the tactics that we use to get people into action is through shame, right? Well, your ancestors voted. You should be voting. People died to vote. That ain't working. I don't know those people.
Far removed from that.
We're too far removed. But the more important aspect of it is there are too many purposeful luxuries in place to appease us into not taking action.
Yeah.
And so how do we start to do that? How do we recognize, for the person that, maybe they're single, maybe they got, a small family, they make enough to get by. They got a little bit saved up. Maybe, they ain't really got nothing to ruffle their feathers up about. Right. But we also know that that's not really enough for them to be substantial to actually make a living. How do we get that person plugged in and evolve? They're not necessarily political, but I know that you should probably be making more money than you're making. If you really want to talk about how to support your family, how to get your kids in college, how to further their education, things like that, right? And so like talking to the things, one, creating a relationship with them, two, identifying the things that need or that they want improvement in their life. More importantly, not that they need, but that they want to be better improved in their life, and showing them how to get plugged in that way. For folks that are listening, the one thing that I always say to folks is, what's the one issue you care about? What's the one thing in your life you wish to be better? Is it you want a better job, or what's the obstacle that's in the way? Is it your city government and how they're taxing different companies, or is it just the job market just isn't available for this skill or the expertise that you have? Is it education, right? Is it too expensive to actually go to school? Is it too expensive to pay for your kids to go to school? Hell yeah, right? That's one issue that you care about. Whatever the issue is, whether it's access to healthcare, whether it's women's healthcare, whether it's voting rights, whether it's fucking the potholes in the streets. Wrap your arms around that issue and pursue it. Talk about it. Talk to your elected officials about it. You will find that is the avenue for you to get plugged into the different work that's happening and how you can get more politically activated.
Because I think one of the challenges is that, when someone's trying to convince you to invest, the first thing they're going to throw at you is their successes, their results that they've had. One of the challenges can be that a lot of the small wins don't always seem to be tangible or explained to people to say, like, no, what you're doing when you do vote is working. A lot of times we vote for people that we don't get a chance to ever see. So yeah, you might have voted for this judge, but if you never see him or her, you have no idea what they've been doing since they've been in office, And so I would imagine that it's difficult bringing that back around to politics and saying, well, we've had people vote this way and their votes counted toward this, and we got this or that accomplished, because it feels like we get bombarded and we lose all of those battles. It seems like we're always on the losing side of that, right? From not necessarily my perspective, but from just a perspective from like our people, it feels like we're always going to lose. And when you feel like you're always going to lose, the best way is result. The best way to sway those people would be results, it seems like. And it seems like that is the hardest. It kind of puts you in between a rock and a hard place. You know what I mean? Because you're trying to convince people to vote for something and get involved in something that doesn't necessarily show them the fruits of their labor right away. So quick transition, right? Because when you touched on systematic things, this whole like mail-in ballot thing is one of the shadiest things I have ever seen, man. Like,
why is it shady?
Because it just so on the news yesterday or the day before, I rarely watch the news. I think I was at my mom's house or something and she had it on, and they were saying that some people got their mail-in ballots, but then they had 2 envelopes in the thing and they sent them in the wrong thing, and that meant their ballot didn't count or wasn't going to be counted the right way or whatever. How easy is it to say, oh, we just never got your ballot in the mail, or we just never got we got your ballot in the mail, but we couldn't count it because it was in the wrong envelope? How many people can you intentionally disqualify by just claiming like an anonymity, like, oh, I didn't get it, I don't know what you want me to do? It just seems like it's so easy for it to be rigged that way. I mean, I guess it could be that way no matter what, but it just seems too easy when you couple that with people that wait in line for 12 hours to vote.
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. And so before even answering that, it's important to understand that everybody that works in government is not necessarily hyper political and support necessarily one party or the other. There are a lot of people that go into government. It sounds foreign to a lot of folks, but just like myself, that I got into political organizing and activism because I very explicitly care about, giving people access, right? There are people that get into, civil service jobs, like, becoming a poll worker or working elections or working for your county election clerk office or the state Secretary of State's office and things like that. They get into those positions explicitly to serve. They want to make sure that everything goes perfectly correct. Mm-hmm. That there's no hiccups in the system, that, everybody has fair and equal access. They take a lot of pride in making sure that everything runs as smoothly as possible. It is extremely, and there's a huge vetting process that goes into that. One of my cousins is actually, the commissioner for the city of Philadelphia, which means he runs the elections and organizes the elections for the city of Philadelphia. They get into those positions while that office is an elected office. The people who work under them, who actually are the ones handling the mail-in ballots, they're not elected by the people. Those are people that are hired and vetted and go through a rigorous process of getting those jobs. I say all of that to say they are very committed to making sure that every single ballot that comes to them, how the elections work, goes off without a hitch, that everybody has equal access. They are not affiliated with the Republican Party. They're not affiliated with the Democratic Party or independents or whatever party that exists out there, the Green Party, the Tea Party, Salah's party. They're not affiliated with any of those. Like, their sole mission is to make sure that everybody can have access. And so there are a lot of those people that are in government that are doing those things. The problem comes into the play when you actually have government officials that try to stick their hand into the machine and to mess things up. And so when you send your ballot in, you can absolutely trust that the first people who are receiving that are not political appointees. They are not elected into office. They are hired folks working a job just like you and me, just to make sure that the vote goes the right way. They also don't look at the ballot. They don't know where that vote is going. Right?
See, and listen, if you tell me it's like remember on Willy Wonka, and they kept opening the the wrappers looking for the golden ticket.
Yeah.
Like, in my mind, and I'm pretty sure, like, and I'm an educated guy, right? But like, at the same time, there's a part of me that's like, I don't know. I don't know. This is a little weird to me. It's weird that you close all these voting stations and then tell me, oh, you could just mail it in. I can't get my mail on purpose any other time. Any other time, FedEx comes to my house, they say, oh yeah, your package was delivered at 8 p.m. and then it doesn't come till 4:30 p.m. the next day, right? So I'm like, if I can't trust that, how in the world am I supposed to trust that? I mean, and I 100% believe what you're saying. I don't know if there's a lot of people that know that for a fact the way you do. And I think more people knowing that and seeing the inside of that, you know what I mean, would give them more of a cause to say, you know what, okay, I feel comfortable doing this now. You know what I mean? Because I'm like, I'm going to send mine in and then I'm going to go wait in line because I don't know.
So the one thing that I highly, highly recommend is don't do that.
Yeah, I know. I know.
Do not send your ballot in and then go wait in line. As a matter of fact, this is something that I found out the other day that I didn't even know. If you do decide you want to do the mail-in ballot, right? But then you decide you want to change your mind and you ain't sure, you want to show up to the polling place anyway, you have to bring your mail-in ballot with you.
Really?
You have to bring it with you so that they can say, okay, we're not counting this mail-in ballot. They can, what they call is spoil that ballot. And then now you can vote in person. You have to bring the ballot and the envelope with you. And so that's important for folks to know. The idea is like they put all of these fail safes in place so that people, because like, I don't know how you're going to vote when you show up. I don't know how you're going to vote when I get the envelope in the mail if I'm working in the elections office. That they're opening up, and the reason why there's two envelopes is because they open the initial envelope that the mail has, the sealed envelope, the secrecy envelope that the ballot is actually in, also doesn't tell me how you're going to vote. That goes into a whole other sorting system that and how they get counted that way. And so like, I would have to know before the ballot got to me how this X person vote or not.
Like it's too late. You got to count it.
Once I open it, I'm probably getting fired, arrested. Like I'm getting like
somebody has to open it, right?
No, there's actually a machine that opens it.
Oh, okay. All right.
So like there's, the human side of it where we don't trust who the players are is like that part is eliminated from it. The other side of it is there's other fail safes put into place so that, okay, yeah, we close polling locations, but you can mail your ballot in. Okay, you don't trust the mail-in ballot. Okay, you can apply for your mail-in ballot. You can get it in the mail. You can actually take it in to a place to turn it in. So like alternatives are created so that folks can still vote and still trust into the system. Yeah, there are still people, mainly in the Republican Party that still try to gum it up and to try to close more polling places, especially in different states. If somebody's listening from another state and city out there that try to make it, harder for Black people specifically, or, people of color or immigrant communities to vote. But by and large, the people that are working the actual election process, they aren't doing that. They aren't doing that at all.
But those are also the people that you don't often hear those people speak
because they're not politicians,
right? But I mean, there's not even people. If you wouldn't have explained the way this goes just now, I probably would have never heard about the inner workings of that and the way that actually works.
Right.
Now, I'm pretty sure you can Google it and find that out and do the reading to figure that out. But the majority of people are not doing that. Right. I think that one of the challenges is that, because it's like a 2-part statement question thing that's about to happen. Right. So, but one of the things that I found that is effective in a negative way is the panic. If you give people obstacles, that creates a little bit of a panic, and you get some people to fall by the wayside. And if those people fall by the wayside, I mean, there's a ridiculous amount of Americans that didn't vote the last time around that would have changed the whole outcome of that election, right? But if you create a panic and you create these obstacles, people fall by the wayside. So I think it's hard to just say, I'm going to trust everything that happens in the government, because I know for a fact that the person that I'm listening to all the time on TV and via Twitter and everything else is definitely lying to me. So when that's the only voice that you get that comes out of government, or I don't want to say the only, but the major voice that you get that comes out of government, it does make it difficult to even want to look to see, well, how is this actually working?
Right.
You know what I mean? So the second part, I feel like this campaign is all about panic, right? I used to be like a big history guy, and I know all about let's say European history. You had dictators, and you had people that were ruling everyone with their fear. It was, if you don't do this, this is going to happen, or I'm going to take this away from you, or whatever, right? And it's effective for that person to stay in power, but that's it. The only thing that gets accomplished is that person stays in power. I feel like these days, everything that I watch that's political is trying to make you deathly afraid of the other person. I watched a commercial, I think it was on ESPN or something the other day, and it was of a burning, literally of a burning building with a homeless person walking by. And it was this is going to be Joe Biden's America. I was like, okay, Joe Biden ain't in office now, and the whole shit been on fire for a whole summer. I'm not understanding how now all of a sudden that's the thing that I'm supposed to be afraid of, when I've seen the country burn before. That happens all the time. So, but I think that the panic between that, and coronavirus and everything else, it's a level of panic that is regurgitated over and over and over. And that level of panic turns into hate, right? It turns into hate. And it's odd to me that panic, that panic can be peddled into racism.
Well, it started as racism.
It absolutely, but it's just wild that any sense of panic, like the Joker said it, like, you guys think you have it all under control, and then once things start to go crazy, you're all going to go crazy and lose your minds. You're not who you think you are.
So, where do I begin with that? It's important to know that the panic is white people. Like, I think, yeah, black people are.
Plain way to put it. I don't disagree, but that's a very plain way to put
it. Because like for the first time, you know, there was I was as you were talking, I was debating how deep I wanted to get into the statistics of this.
Yeah,
because I don't necessarily have them offhand, but the statistics are out there on this. When let's go back, 12 years when Barack Obama was elected president, the lines started to be drawn for white people. What party was for black people and what party was for white people? The lines were drawn that way for them. It started to be drawn then, right? Oh, this party elected a black president, that's not the party for me. Even if they didn't necessarily know that that's how they were feeling. When you start to poll them on different things, right? And so one of the things that came out of the Obama presidency that we saw was that the people who voted against Obama and who are still within that party highly are against interracial marriage. They still believe in segregation. They still believe Obama, to this day, a third of the Republican Party still believe that President Obama was born in Kenya and is a secret Muslim. To this day, and let me make sure I said that again, a third of the Republican Party to this day still believes those things. What broke up that even more was the election of Trump. Trump, exacerbated how much white people identified with race and the Republican Party.
That was intentional.
But what you saw, and now when you talk about the panic, what you saw out of that, the exodus out of the party, was the white people was like, oh my God, this has all been a sham. This whole venture being a Republican, conservative, whatever. They start to believe that. I need to leave this party because I'm not racist, right? And so you saw the panic. You see the panic of people leaving the Republican Party and supporting Democrats and liberals, and we got to get our government back, quote unquote. And then you see the same inside the Republican Party. We're losing our country. We're losing our identity, yada, yada, yada. That same panic. So the panic on both sides is white people. But the other side of that equation is also understanding that, like, we're seeing a hyper version of all of this because Republicans are actually losing when it comes to mainstream support and by and large, American support of their policies, of their ideals, of the party in general. And so you're seeing all of these different attacks on, like, voting rights. They just recently announced that they're going to end the census count early because, whatever fucking reason, right? I honestly don't even know the reason why they said they were going to end the census count early. We're not even going to talk about the importance of that right now. But they said they're going to end that early, right? We see them, forcing through all of these judges on a federal level and now on the Supreme Court, where they're now picking their third judge because they see a threat to their existence, right? And so when you talk about, like, the, conservative principles, like trickle down tax rates, right? Cut the tax for the rich and they'll create jobs for the poor. Like, we know that doesn't work. Historically speaking, we've now tried this multiple times and it doesn't work, right? People are starting to catch on to their scheme and now realize that this is not necessarily the party that I want to be identified with. The other side of it is that the Democratic Party, now we're talking about presidential politics, the Democratic Party isn't doing a good job of bringing those people in either.
Right.
So, when you talked about before in the last election that people, more people did not vote than voted for Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump.
Right. And that's insane to me. And
it's, again, it's by design. right? I know and for folks who don't understand, I'm very much against the conservative party, the Republican Party.
Mm-hmm.
I am not against there being two parties or more parties, actually.
Mm-hmm.
But, we know that their policies have not worked. We know that they are the main proponents of cutting programs for like education and integrating schools and, fair housing and all of those different things. Right. And so when I cut all of these ways for you to get plugged in, for Black people specifically to get plugged into the political process, because I know I don't have your votes.
Yeah. So
right?
I'm not going to worry about what you care about.
Exactly. And that goes back to this question we're talking about mail-in ballots. Why do I care about if you going to vote? You ain't voting for me in the beginning. If anything, I need to now, and what we see, start to sabotage that. Mm-hmm. Right. And so the other side of that, getting back to the biggest point that you mentioned was like the tribalism of it. Mm-hmm. Tribal, like people are tribal when it comes to politics everywhere in the world. Right. When we see what we see now in America is new because of how we've allowed our policies to kind of transform over time. But it's not new for other countries. Other countries exist and go through what we are currently going through.
Yeah, because if you ever seen what happens in countries when something's going on with the president that they don't like,
they overthrow his ass.
Yeah, yeah.
They overthrow him. Or if you see, like, you go watch like European Parliament. Like the way they talk to each other, it makes you want to think they're about to throw hands. And like sometimes they do. But so like it's that's new for American politics, the tribalism of it. Yeah. But it's also that's also human nature. Mm-hmm. It's human nature to be tribal. It's human nature to be associated with the people you want to agree with. The problem is there no longer exists in America a path for the two sides to come together and to actually like talk to each other and disagree.
One or the other.
Right. And that's the problem.
I think that's the hard. I think the thing for me I remember when Trump got elected, and I said, this is going to be bad. It won't be bad for me, like in my daily life. It won't be. I don't have anything extra to be afraid of on the streets or anything like that. But the people that felt empowered by him being elected are the people that's the problem, right? It's like you empower people to draw this line and force others into this pattern of thinking, almost like a survival. And then when it's time to vote, you want to put out these messages like, oh, we're all in this together. How are we this whole time? Not only have you been spewing out things that are disgusting, but you've been using the election as or the president as your platform to do it. You know what I mean? And now we're all in this together. We're not. There's there's like one side or the other, and it's. I just don't remember it ever being like the line being drawn so thick. You know what I mean?
I'm trying to like do this in a way where I don't dig on like Republicans and like white people too much. Because like it's as much as we talk about like how tribal things are and how people aren't willing to come to the table, like that's done by Republicans. Like that is very explicitly done by Republicans. And I'll drive this point home to mention this. When Obama got elected into office in 2008 election, 2009 came around, he wanted to pass the Affordable Care Act. And there's elements of like, folks not willing to come to the table prior to this, but I think a lot of this metastasized in this era that I'm about to speak on. And so he wanted to pass the Affordable Care Act. Now, mind you, the Affordable Care Act is a healthcare policy that originated from Republicans. Let's be very clear about that. Obamacare is a policy originated by Republicans. Right. He took that policy and said, let's do it. They didn't want to support it. Not one single Republican was willing to come to the table and debate on the issues, talk about how to improve the healthcare plan, or do anything related to getting it, supporting the agenda of getting folks to have healthcare. Mm-hmm. And so at the very base of it, they just was like, this, you want to do this? We ain't supporting it. We're not going to support it at all. We don't want to be involved with it. We don't want to attend hearings. We don't want to do anything. And so what happens is it passes. Democrats get, they get taken to school for it in the next election. Republicans become in office and take over the Senate. And then after that, the House and the Senate, actually. And then what you saw after that was every year, starting in 2011, that Obama was in office, they passed a record for the lowest number of laws passed by the U.S. government. Every single year, they broke their record on. So basically, they just said, "Oh, Obama is in office. We ain't passing nothing." Yeah, and so when you talk about like tribalism and how we got here, and people can't come to the table, they started that. They started that by just simply saying, this black man is president and is in office. I don't want to do anything, pass any law that makes him look good or support anything, even if it's a policy that I previously supported. I don't want to be a part of it at all. Mm-hmm. That's what they did. They did that from 2011 until he left office. Mm-hmm. And then what did we see in the first few years of the Trump administration? The first thing that they do is try passing all of these bills. They get all of these judges appointment. That's another thing that they did. Obama would appoint judges. They said, we ain't hearing them. We're not appointing them. We're going to block it. We don't want nothing to do with it. You ain't getting your judges passed, right? You ain't getting all of these things done that you want to get done. The first thing that happened.
That would be conceding. You know what I mean? It's one thing if you win, but I'm not about to help you. I can't do anything about the fact that you won, but I can stifle you while you're here.
Right. Because the last thing we want is to have your presidency look like it was a success.
Right.
And so all of this like division that we talk about, all of this tribal politics, people can't come to the table, that started with those things that Republicans were doing when Obama was in his office. And then the first thing that we saw when Republicans can take control of government, Trump gets elected. What do? They pass records on a number of judges that they, appoint. They pass tax laws that, benefit the most wealthy people, right? What do we see when Nancy Pelosi is in the House of Representatives? They don't even talk to her, right? No, now you saw another halt of laws being passed because Democrats are in control again. And so like we see, like this is a lot of this is the Republicans making this bed and making the entire country lay in it on how we come to the table, talk to each other, and get things done.
It's just it's the whole purpose of the idea of having a two-party system is to keep things balanced, right? But it's wild to think that, how can I say it? The whole purpose is to keep things balanced, but it doesn't work, right? It doesn't work because the things that control the people that are in office, there's no checks and balances for that, right? So like, if I am donating a particular amount of money to this office or person or whomever, there's nothing to stop you from doing what I'm asking you to do, right? While you're there. So you can't control the fact that there's two parties, but you can control one of the parties while they're in control. And it's just crazy just to think like just how many layers there are to unpacking all of this, that it's really not a thing that you can say, well, what do we do? And you come up with one solution. It's a generational programming of the way we do things that has been disgusting the whole time,
Yeah. I mean, it's been disgusting the whole time. I mean, honestly, like, I don't even know what else do you say about that. Like and I think it's important for folks to understand that while it's been disgusting the whole time, it was never in the beginning designed how it is today.
Right.
Over time, we saw all of these new iterations, new laws passed, new reforms, new ways of, back in, in the early, the foundings of America, politicians would go broke for running office, right? They didn't go into office and as millionaires and certainly didn't come out. They came out in debt. Presidents came out in debt.
If you don't go into office as a billionaire now, you definitely come out as one.
Exactly. And so like it wasn't, while it was by design to disenfranchise Black people and immigrants and things like that, it wasn't by design to be this perverse as it is today, right? When we talk about like how much money goes into politics, when we talk about all of these like super PACs, super PACs are political action committees that any random person can kind of set up. I got Mike Pence's flying around my head.
I saw it, but I wasn't going to say anything.
You got all of these political action committees set up to just funnel money to support whoever they want to get elected into office so that they can do their bidding. Like that's new. That's new in the last decade or two. Yeah. Like that's not how we originally, thought.
But that's how you control it. You know what I mean? You control these people by saying, and that's one of the things they didn't like about Obama, was that it's like, I'm not going to let you control me the way you control some of these other people. And I understand how that works. I just don't want anything to do with it.
And like, there were some things I disagree with Obama on and some problems that, he had. But like, the one thing, and this is the difference between the Republican Party and the Democratic Party, going back to that original question. And this is the difference between Trump and Biden. The Republican Party doesn't care about talking to me at all. They don't care about putting forth policy that supports me, that actually supports me. They're not willing to listen to me. They're not willing to be swayed by my opinion if I actually get a platform to discuss some things with them. Republican Party just is not interested in that at all. And in fact, they are actively doing things to make sure that I don't vote, that I don't get educated. They're trying to get rid of the Affordable Care Act right now in the middle of a pandemic, which is like bonkers, right? And so like they're doing all of those things. The Democratic Party is not doing that. They are not trying to make sure I don't vote. Like they just are not doing that. And then the difference between Biden and Trump, I actually think Donald Trump would try to kill me if he had the chance from a policy level. Like, I actually believe that. I actually believe, and I say that because you look at some of the things that he's done. Like, the man literally was willing to take parents that emigrated here, separate them from their kids, and not just put them into these like makeshift shelters and have them sleeping on the ground, but was going as far as to physically fly them to different parts of the country and then say to them, I will let your kids stay here if you agree to be deported. How fucked up is that? If that's not a person that says, I don't care about your well-being, I might, implement policies that will harm you, if not kill you, I don't really know what is. I don't believe that Biden is doing that. Yeah, I believe Biden has some racist ways in his past, and he had some policy that's absolutely racist. But I don't believe he is creating policy specifically to say, I want to punish Black people. Like Trump is specifically creating policy to say, I want to punish immigrants. That's explicitly what Trump has been doing.
Well, but that's, one of the things that was the thing that got him elected. And that goes back to the panic. I remember saying that, his war on Mexicans is just insane. The crazy thing to me is like, okay, well, you want to build a wall, that's cool. But like, I don't remember anyone saying, and I have friends and family from all over the country. I really don't remember anybody saying, what's wrong with this problem? What's wrong with this country? Mexicans. They're responsible for all the crime, all the bad things that happen here. They bring diseases. None of that is necessarily the case, right? But when you identify with people and create that narrative and that panic that these people of this particular group are going to harm you, ruin you, whatever, then it allows you the opportunity to be able to do whatever you want to do unimpeded later, because you've convinced people that what you're doing, no matter how heinous, is to protect them. And I think that's the biggest tragedy of all of it. Even the comment he made, like, the suburban housewives are going to vote for me because they don't want their neighborhoods turned into Black neighborhoods. You're going to get those people that already feel that way that are going to vote for you. And then now, no matter what you do to keep us out of those neighborhoods, they're going to support it. because they're convinced that, oh, these people moving into my neighborhood is going to drag the neighborhood down.
Again, I saw those like reports and things like that. And, I've seen news reports talking about that and like, oh, he's losing support in suburban, housewives because like, nah, I'm telling you, Republican Party really split when on racial lines with the election of Trump. And they recognized that they had a home with this type of stuff when he was elected. They know that he ain't said nothing new or different than what he said that got him elected. This is what worked for him. And so like there are actually people that's like, well, shit, yeah, I don't want, my neighborhood to get dirtied up by black and brown people. I want it to, look like the way it does. I mean, it's okay if one or two of them come through, but like, we don't want it to turn into the hood, right? Like they actually think this way and they actually say these things. I was just talking to my wife about this earlier. Like there are actually people out there, largely white people, that truly believe that when they fall on hard times, it's because an immigrant took their job. There are actually people out there that believe that. And I've heard them I've been in conversations with folks that actually say that. And so like, it's jarring to media and to political figures because while the Republican Party is much more openly racist, they have never really said it explicitly that way. And he says it explicitly. Yeah. He says that Mexicans are rapists, killers, drug dealers, and they're taking your jobs. Don't know which kind of job you got if you worried about a rapist, killer, drug dealer taking it.
The crazy part about that is like, yeah, Mexicans are taking your job. Okay. Well, you're talking about immigrant Mexicans. They have jobs that I don't want. So I don't understand why it makes such a big difference. You telling these people that are deathly afraid that Mexicans are going to ruin their neighborhood, are you going to do the jobs they do? No. So why do you care? Why? Why? But I think people want to identify with something to get upset about, to something, and something like almost like people need something to hate. And if I give you enough things to hate, whether it's people, the other politicians, the weather, whatever, it's like people will bond over things that they hate.
It's not that people want to hate. It's people want someone to blame for things going wrong in their life.
That's true too.
And so, and they want a place to blame for the fear that they have.
Yeah.
And so if I play to your fears and if I give you something, you're scared of this thing over here, right? You're scared of the rise in violent crime. Well, if I give you a thing to associate that violent crime with and it be black people, oh, well, that's it. Like I'm attached to that. I've held on to that, regardless if it's racist or even if whether or not you identify as someone that's racist, right? Or if your best friend, like it doesn't matter if your best friend's black, if you're white, like none of that matters if your kid's black, right? You fear this thing and now I have something to attach it to. Or you have a trouble in your life with this thing and I need to attach the fear to that. To the frustration of why this thing has gone wrong in your life, right? And so that's exactly what he does. He identifies that for people and he attaches that fear or he attaches that trouble that they deal with in their life. And now they can just gravitate towards that. And that's something that you don't, again, the Republican Party has always done and flirted with things like that in the past, but it's so much more explicit with Donald Trump. That it's hard for people who pay attention to this stuff on a regular basis. It's like, what? How could he possibly say that? But for people who feel that way and feel connected to it, they're like, oh, well, I've already been thinking that. Now I understand where that's coming from.
So I had this discussion with one of my coworkers and I said, this is a super unpopular opinion, right? So I know this before I say it. So I was saying to them, I say, narcissism is a complicated thing, right? And narcissism will lead you down a path to do whatever it is that you have to do or say to get you what you want. And it doesn't make a difference who you offend or who you hurt, as long as you feel like you're getting that satisfaction or you're reaching that goal, it doesn't matter what happens in the process, right? I genuinely don't believe that Donald Trump really wanted or thought that he was going to become president. I think that when it happened, he was like, wait, what?
Yep.
Okay. Now let's try to figure this out because I'm here now. And the narcissism took over when he says, oh, I like this. This isn't bad. This is pretty good. I think that he is more of a narcissist than a racist. I think that his narcissism drives that. Now, the reason I say that is because everything that he says and does, policy-wise or otherwise, is to seemingly appease other people because they're going to vote to keep him in office. And that seems to be his goal more than anything, is to keep himself in office, right? So I am not saying that he has our best interests at heart and that he cares about us at all and that he's not a racist person. But I think the narcissism is what overrules that. We've had racist presidents before, right? It's just nothing there has changed. But his level of narcissism, I think, just far outweighs everything else. And he'll say or do whatever needs to be done. He knows that he doesn't have to appease us. In his mind, he doesn't have to appease us to get reelected. So he doesn't. If he thought that he really had to appease us to be reelected, he would. But he knows he doesn't have to. In his mind, he doesn't really have to. So I said that to one of my coworkers, and they're like, "Hey, you sound like you really hate this guy." No, I don't hate anybody. I just think that narcissism is a very dangerous thing.
I would agree that, the narcissism in his personality far as outweighs like whatever racism he has in his heart, right. At least from how he displays it. Mm-hmm. But I think they complement each other though.
They do, right.
And so, I think he recognizes I don't think he's oblivious to the racism that he has. Like, I think he actually knows he's racist. Like, I 100%, it's not too many people that are aware, evil is this thing. Like, we like to think of evil people as like, I know I'm evil, like this evil villain on a TV show or a movie. And I know that I'm like, no, evil is literally a point of view. It's a perspective. Mm-hmm. The person that's quote unquote, how we identify them as evil does not think that they are evil. They think they are good. I think Donald Trump actually believes he's a racist person. Mm-hmm. I also know that he is incredibly narcissist, mm-hmm. and he uses that. I also believe that, like, when he was running for president, he didn't think he was going to win either. I think he actually was using that in a narcissistic way to build a platform for himself.
Exactly.
But when he bumbled his way into actually winning, he was like, I agree. He said, yeah, I can make this work to even a larger platform for myself. Mm-hmm. The narcissist in him makes him want to hold on to all of that power as much as possible. Now you see people having conversations on whether he's going to actually leave office or not, right? Like, that's the narcissist in him. That's not the racist. Mm-hmm. When you see, him getting the coronavirus, right? Yep. Getting sick, not wanting to admit he had it, not wanting to talking about it, not wanting to go to this, to see this physician, checking himself out early, finding ways to hold rallies early before he's actually free and clear of it. That's the narcissist in him. That's not the racist in him. Like, that's the idiot in him too, but like, that's the narcissist in him, because he needs to be this tough guy. He needs to it needs to be all about him. He needs to be the center of attention. He's so great. He's so this. He's so like that he does that extremely, extremely well. Yep. He also uses the racism of it to say, that's the reason why I'm the one to protect you, is because I believe these Mexicans are these illegal immigrants are criminals and drug dealers and rapists and murderers. And I'm the one that's been sent to kind of save you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as I was saying that, my coworkers kind of looking at me like I had two heads, and I'm like, yeah, I just don't think that that's the overwhelmingly worst quality about the guy. You know what I mean? I think in some ways he can be great at what he's doing, and depending on what you care about, it's going to appeal to you. So, but if you look at anything that has to do with him being a decent human being, if you're ever asking him to do such a thing, you're never going to get that. So if you're in a position in your life where you never need the system for anything, great. If you're a person that the system works in your favor anyway, then great. He wouldn't bother you. I can understand where you're coming from. However, there are hundreds of millions of people that are not in that same position where these people are going to be ignored if you vote. So I work directly for the Department of Defense, right? So it would be in my best interest to keep a guy in office that wants to beef up the military and things like that. You know what I mean? I have children, I have a home, I have all of these things, right? But at the end of the day, I still wake up brown. You know, I still, when I get pulled over in my nice neighborhood, in my nice car, I have to be acutely aware of everything that's happening, or that could be a very bad situation for me for something that I may or may not have even done.
Yep.
So I think that the line that gets drawn, especially now, not even on a political level, but more on a social level, is that it makes it feel like if you care about me, you can't ignore all of the things that impact me, because the things that impact me are not things that money can buy. Money cannot buy my safety, right? I have to be in the top 1% for money to buy my safety, right? On just a regular daily basis. You know what I mean? So having more money does not give me safety. Does it give me an opportunity to provide? Yeah, it does. But it doesn't give me safety once I leave my home. If I am aligned with you and you are not also concerned with my safety, then now me and you have a problem. And if I'm explaining to you that the choices that you're making are going to perpetuate a cycle of danger for me, it's going to be difficult for me to want to cross that line one way or the other. If you happen to be white and someone's telling you that black people are your problem, you're going to feel the same thing in reverse, whether or not it's true, but you're going to feel the same thing in reverse, right? So I think it's a way of, right now, I think we're fighting a battle that is just very different. Like you said, it didn't originate this way, and things weren't intended to be this way. There's so many things that have turned out to be a way that your social security number was never meant to be used the way it's used now. You know, people look at the projects as such a negative connotation, not knowing, well, the projects really weren't for broken poor people in the beginning, or broken poor black people in the beginning. That's not really how that started. It's what it turned into, because they had the buildings and they just needed to fill them with people. But that's not really what it was intended for, right? But I think when things get just perpetuated in a way that forces you to draw a line, I think you end up where you are now, right? So I'm gonna segue to my last segment, right? I do this thing. My blog is called "Now I Got to Fly." I don't know how you did that. So the blog on convopit.com is titled Wisdom and Whiskey. And I am a avid whiskey and wine drinker. I like tasting wines and whiskeys and things like that. But some of the best conversations in life are had over a drink. And one of the things that I like to do is to have whoever I have on the show give just a little bit of wisdom on whatever topic we're talking about that day, right? If you were speaking to a person that either is not sure which way they want to vote or is somewhat disinterested in voting, what words of wisdom would you give them in, let's say, 30 seconds or less? I'm going to challenge you because I know you could do it, but I'm going to challenge you to 30 seconds.
Say that question one more time.
So for the person that is unsure which way they're going to vote or is just completely disinterested in voting, what would you say to them to convince them to get involved and to I would say to educate themselves enough to make a decision?
That's a big question. All right, 30 seconds or less. The first thing that I would say to them is, what issues do you care about?
Mm-hmm.
What's the one thing in your life that you want better, right? Whether it's a job, whether it's healthcare, whether it's school for your children, whether it's just you just want more money, right? You just want more money to live, a luxurious life, right? All of that is at stake and what's coming up in this election, but all of that is always at stake and it's always up for the topic of discussion when it comes to elections. And so take that one issue that you care about on a local level, in your city, your state government, your local elected officials, and drive that home to them on how they need to improve that one thing for you. And you will find a way, you will find a community that will wrap its arms around you. You will find other folks that will agree with you on that issue. And you'll find that, a community of others and a network that you'll be able to plug into very easily and see resolutions to the things that you want to get done.
See, I didn't time you, but I think that was close.
I hope so. It's the one thing about, and that's the hard thing about politics though, is like, you need to know about who you're talking to before you can just start preaching at them. And that's the one thing that I tried to do more and more in the work that I do, is like, it's not about me. Like, it ain't about me at all. Don't vote because I told you to. Don't vote because I know we just, one of our events the other day, we had Isaiah Thomas, basketball Hall of Famer, come through and record some stuff for us, right? People are going to vote because he said so, and we recorded that video. But also, don't vote because he said so. Because that's not enough. What do you care about? That's why you should vote. That's why you should get involved. That's why you should learn more. Even if it's something as simple as just, I want to make a little bit more money. That's why you should get involved. That's why you should call people, show up at their office and be like, yo, I still ain't got a job because of X, Y, and Z. What you gonna do to help me? And they need to help you because they work for you.
Yeah, I agree 1,000%. And you putting that out there and telling people, because I think that's a huge thing. I think people just don't know what things are at their disposal. And the more that we know and the more that we do with that, I think the better off we'll be. So, my brother, I want to thank you for your time and for your wisdom. Real quick, tell people where they can find you, social media wise, website, things like that.
Absolutely. I appreciate this conversation. I enjoy talking about the work I do. I am very passionate about it because I think it is very critical for us to build a network. Even, and I want to say this explicitly because I didn't get a chance to say this, even when we don't disagree, especially Black people. It's important for us to be able to create, because nobody else is listening to us anyway. So it's important for us to be able to connect with each other, even when we have these moments and we don't agree with each other, as long as there's no hate involved. And I mean hate, I mean like racism, violence, things like that. We need to do that because nobody else is listening to us anyway. But folks can listen to my podcast. You can follow me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter at Salaah's Corner. That's SALAAHS Corner. You can also check out my website at salahscorner.com, where I do all of my written work. Check out new podcast episodes. We do have Rich on the blog as well. Hot shout out to him for posting up on the blog. I'm also, like I said, I do have this nonprofit that just started. It's called Coalition for Civic Engagement. And so it's a platform to create programs specifically for young people on how they can get plugged into the political process, not just programs, but events, pop-up events. Right now, we're trying to do something about get out the vote in the Philly area for this upcoming election. And as the success of this organization continues, I'll be looking to hire some people. So get in touch with me, please, because I need help doing this work.
Yeah, I'm sure.
It's tiring.
I'm sure. All right, my brother, that is a wrap.